What's good as a hobby but terrible as a profession? Baking. I love to make bread and cakes, but on my time. I couldn't imagine having to wake up at 3 a.m. every day to start making bread. Crochet and knitting. I'm constantly being told, you should have a business doing that. But nobody will be willing to pay for my time. They'd only be willing to pay for materials if I'm lucky. For example, a double bed-sized blanket in a relatively simple stitch would take me 170 to 200 hours. Basic yarn approximately 40 pounds to 60 pounds. I'd be lucky if the customer would pay 50 pounds to 80 pounds. It's the same for a lot of handcrafts. I was literally jaw on the floor the other day when I saw a designer crochet halter top being sold for 600 pounds. I'd be super lucky if I got 15 pounds to 20 pounds. Wow, woke up to all this. Thank you for your upvotes. Throwing kisses, and thank you kind strangers for my first awards. Throwing kisses, throwing kisses, throwing kisses. Building computers. Used to be a great hobby for me back in the day, but once you work in a place that troubleshoot and maintain them, you get tired of the constant monotony for speccing out the layout and hardware, software install and updating, making sure connections are seated properly, etc. Took all the fun and wonder away. Anything to do with horses. Writing. For some people it works out, but most things are never popular and not usually anything enough to support yourself. I think most hobbies are terrible as professions. I'm a home brewer, and jobs in breweries seem pretty stressful with long days to meet market demands, without a great pay. Video games. Seems like an absolutely horrible industry to work in with crunch time and constant demands up the throat. Photography. Sort of once it becomes your job it really quickly loses a lot of its charm and the customers can be very very annoying at times. Although I do admit sometimes it is freaking fantastic as well. It does depend on the subject though, I suppose. Ooh, this is relevant after this past weekend. Coaching, or generally working within youth sports. I have a million horror stories I could tell. Most centering around parents, adults. Only train one night a week now, and have limited my services to purely training teams, versus some of the admin or multi-night roles I've held in years past. Nightmare fuel. Had to reduce to a pure training capacity because the more I interacted with adults around sports, especially already having a full-time job, the more I'd just be bummed out whole weekends at a time. Anything directly relating to entertainment. That includes making music, movies, video games, sports, whatever. If it's anything that tons of people have a passion for because it's fun, that's going to translate into people wanting to make a living out of it, and thus the market will be very crowded and competitive. Home improvement. As a hobby you can take your time, do research, spread the cost, and do it right. As a profession, it's feast or famine. You are competing with every dickhead with a pickup and bids can be all over the place. You never know what you are going to bite into when you start a demo. Does this bathroom have one layer of wallboard or four? Is there rod under this dishwasher? You want to give the best product to the customer, but the good enough meter is all over the place. This thread makes me think that everything sucks when it becomes a job. Hobbyist collecting. I've known two people who grew up loving comic books, so they opened their own comic book stores as adults. It's not just that 90+% of comic shops tend to go under for lack of business, although that's certainly true. The other reality is that the customers are, if possible, even more demanding, opinionated, and rude than customers in other retail stores. Poker, for 99% of us, can cost a lot of money if you are not the best, but still a great game. Collecting anything. You wouldn't make any money because you keep what you buy. Fishing. I love fishing. Going out whenever I want, in weather that is pretty much perfect. Catching as many fish as I want with friends, having a nice uber fresh fish dinner. It is such a nice day. But, as an occupation, commercial fishing sucks. Dangerous, dirty, poor pay. Cold, seasickness, injury, stinky, it goes on and on. If you are a fishing guide it is not a lot better. I remember one morning, it was just before 7 a.m. I was launching my boat at a ramp in the eastern shore of Virginia. It was a magnificent morning. Beautiful sky, cool morning light breeze and birds feeding everywhere. I had my son and daughter with me and were really happy and excited. There was Guy launching his boat at the same time. He was obviously a professional guide. We started talking and he said that he was jealous of me. That he could see the joy I had in going out and that he was remembering what it was like to go out fishing just for the fun of it. He said he was in his 5th year of being a guide and was quite successful. But, it was his job and it felt like a job. The joy was gone. Building custom motorbikes and hot rods. Someone asked me why I don't do this for a living since I'm so passionate about them. I answered that it would turn a relaxed hobby into stressful work with budgets and deadlines and the kind of piety I plan and build them with. Only Jeff Bezos could afford one if I planned to actually pay myself a decent hourly wage. Filmmaking. I spent about 7 years trying to work my way into the filmmaking industry. It was very fun at first, but I have found, at least in California, the industry is filled with scumbags that would sell their own mother to make some quick cash. I figured eventually I would get to meet the real artists that are passionate about what they make. Turns out that's just how the industry is. I also at some point realized I was no longer in it for the right reasons and I was starting to become a scumbag myself. Now I work in IT and make home movies with friends for fun and I am much happier. Digital drawing. I enjoy it as stress relief, and at least right now while I'm still kinda learning my style and discovering different techniques, methods, I don't think I'd do well under deadlines or stressing about client preferences, demands. Not to mention all the art stealing that happens online. I just like doodling fan art and OCs for my own enjoyment and posting them if I feel good about it. Ironically, I am sort of working on a comic as a passion project, but I don't really want to hit it big or make it a career. I just want to tell my story, ya know? Science. No matter the field, science is awesome. But holy hell is academia flawed, in every country. It basically burns through researchers. People are underpaid and overworked. They are exploited as much as possible. If they got paid any less or made to work any more, the system would collapse. I feel MMA is it's fun to train and learn, but unless you make it to the upper echelon you're fighting for pennies. Same with kickboxing and boxing. I had a sparring partner, his first pro fight he took a flying knee that split his wig. He made like $100 and was in the hole for like $60K. Made me give up on any professional aspirations. Surgery. I think I'll just keep it as a hobby. It loses all the fun when it's licensed. Fencing. It's quite fun to do as a hobby, but it isn't easy to make much money, even at the highest levels. Chef. It's fun to cook for friends, but the general public sucks. Reef keeping. Chemistry application that goes well beyond a typical hobby. You are essentially replicating an ocean in a few gallons of water in your living room. As a profession you are dealing with creatures that shouldn't be removed from their ecosystems, but you need to sell them to what will be more than likely their quick doom. If the creatures somehow beat all odds from collection to transport to adaptation and adjustment to being housed within a few gallons of water, they need to survive long enough to make the store money. These creatures then need to contend with how lazy an average reef keeper might become a few months into the hobby. It's a terrible business but impressive hobby. Science. You turn from inquisitive to a professional, jaded beggar. Everything. Once you have to do it, it no longer becomes fun. Sex. It's fun, but doing it for money not so much. Any form of athlete would be hard, I think. At the highest level, constantly worrying about performance. One injury being career-ending or a form slump being potentially career-ending must just be perma-stress. There's so much random crap not associated with your direct job which would suck the fun out of it, I would imagine. Illustration. You can end up making pretty awesome stuff. But porn pays so damn well you'll be surely tempted to try it. And some artists just end up making only porn or furry porn, because you can charge double or triple just because it's NSFW, for the confidentiality part too. Sometimes they end up being tired of their job in a few years because, who wouldn't be affected by drawing dicks every day? Fitness. My buddy is a trainer and he's ripped. His clients are mostly obese people in their 40s and 50s with money who like the idea of having a trainer but lack the discipline to get fit. They think some trainer is going to fix their 30 years of poor habits and shitty diet in one program with no effort. It doesn't work that way. They fire him because they don't see results. Lol. Making music. I know famous musicians that barely make enough money to get by. Being a mechanic. The money you save being able to fix your own shit is serious. Thousands. However, even as a hobbyist, amount of people that want you to fix their car, usually for as close to free as they can get, is kinda awful. Especially when people you otherwise like don't want to listen to you about the importance of maintenance, or learning what the lights on their dash mean. When you work professionally, in a shop, you see the dark depth of the idiocy of the common person, who doesn't bother to learn a fuck of anything about owning, forget maintaining the 1-ton death box they careen themselves about in at high speeds. The kinds of things you see come in, that could kill themselves or someone else, is definitely damaging to your faith in humanity. Cooking maybe? I love to cook, but after doing it for work, cooking stuff I don't even like making, for 12 hours a day, I get home and make myself microwaved ramen. I get so burnt out on cooking. Art. I've been an artist my whole life, any medium. As for me personally, I think that having a job involving drawing or art would absolutely kill my love for it because my favorite thing about art is that I can do whatever I want. Skeptical smiley face. Being a YouTuber. You must output a video on schedule, edit and come up with good content. Sure, it's fun when you do it at your own pace, but once you have a schedule, it feels more like a chore. Restoring, or working on, cars. It is a good time when it's your time and something you find interesting. My dad has been in bodywork for about 40 years. He has built racing motors, alcohol, tuned race cars, and restored God knows how many cars. What started as something he loved, he now despises. His joints are shot, his health will eventually deteriorate due to all the chemicals, and he is exhausted. He can't stand the thought of even having another muscle car. I took his advice when I was younger and avoided auto as a profession. I dabble in it and work around it. I enjoy it, but not directly involved. There's my 2 cents. Marine biology. As a rule, it's not a great idea to go into a profession that isn't producing a commodity that can be sold easily, requires multiple postdocs to be competitive, and generally most people would do for free. Therefore, it is a very competitive field that doesn't pay well. Staring into the blank abyss for hours on end, thinking about why Ariel didn't just write down what she wanted to say when she lost her voice. Animation. It's already a nightmare and monotonous as a hobby, but since you can do it on your own terms and make whatever you want, it all ends up beautiful and worth it. But as a job? Oh God. Get ready for inhumane work hours and demands. Animating things you don't even care about while trying to replicate someone else's style and working with a dozen more animators. Plus, even after all that, there's a huge chance no one will even see it. Not everyone can work for big box studios and projects. Even if you do, however, there's usually so many animators working on a single movie or show that you'll likely be cleaning other people's animations or animate an entire 3 seconds of whatever you're working on. So you can't even point to the project you worked on and say, I animated that, because it's more like, I animated that 3 seconds. And that 3 seconds. And that 3 seconds. And that. The animation industry is a nightmare. Game tester. It's fun to play video games all day, but as a tester you won't be playing. You will spend the entire day banging a rock with various weapons to see if they are bugged. Working out. I got all my stuff ready and was doing personal training on the side. People ruined it. Stand-up comedy. Source. My near-empty bank account in 2015 when I got out. Photography. Lots of fun in your spare time. Way too many people with cameras out there creating too much competition. Well, would you look at that? Turns out the answer is everything. Writing. Most people get into it under the impression they'll strike it rich, like J.K. Rowling or Stephen King. They Dunning-Kruger themselves into the delusion that any book they write will be an automatic bestseller. Reality. The market is saturated, and even Rowling and King couldn't duplicate their own success when they tried a second time under pseudonyms. My own sister has 4 young adult novels out, and she's never hit any kind of bestseller list. She did the math on her first book, dividing the advance she received by the amount of time she spent writing it. It worked out to 18 cents an hour. Visual effects. Making cool shit that doesn't exist and bringing it to life is fun, and it's easier to do every year, but the professional industry is a clusterfuck filled with constant overtime, Mostly unpaid if you live in the UK, low pay and a lack of job security. Most end up quitting the industry after 5 to 10 years because it's just not financially viable once the "I work on cool movies that make billions" dies off. The ones with technical skill like FXTDs, they do all the big pyro explosions and water sims etc., could easily transfer to a programming job with their knowledge of Python and C++ and make 3 times as much. The whole industry is a spiral of underbidding each other to get more work even if it's at a loss. There's always one of the big companies going bankrupt every 5 years and another taking its place. Any attempts at a unionization are squashed with the fear of being put on the blacklist that all recruiters use, and sadly the best chance of that happening was during the pandemic when even the seniors who are too cozy were losing their jobs, but alas that never came to be, and we are back to the same level of clusterfuckery we've been in for the past 15 plus years. Hairdressing. It's fun to play around styling hair with your friends, but after 10 years of constantly dealing with the gross sides of humanity and the absolute lack of hygiene and manners the general public have, it really kills any funness and magic you got as a teen mucking around with straightening irons and box dyes. Not to mention the contact dermatitis and eczema you get from being in the field long term. My hands look like the dry, desiccated, ancient remains of Boris Karloff's mummy. There is no glamour to a hairdresser's life. Bowling. Unless you're good enough to be in the top approximately 20 in the world. The top earner in all of 2020 made $293,000 from the PBA Tour. The 10th highest earner made $71,000. Only 16 made more than $50,000. From there it just keep dropping to where the number 50 earner only made about $10,000. You also have to pay for each tournament you enter. If 300 bowlers show up for a tournament, you need to finish roughly in the top 100 to even make your money back. It's just too hard to go all in on. Most pro bowlers either run pro shops or give lessons when they can. I'm a composer and I don't really see my music doing money, and there are 2 reasons for that. 1. The music industry is very large and I see that a large number of artists and groups are competing for a small place on the top. Everything seems unpredictable. Too many variables, too many possibilities, and I don't feel like risking my chances at it. 2. My style simply isn't mainstream. For now, I'll just keep learning and doing it as a hobby, and maybe I'll please some people one day. Dancing. Most dancers get paid shit. They break their bodies throughout their lives, and have to retire very young in most cases. Thanks for watching. See you later.